organizers want this document to have a wider audience. The pontiff will hope his message sent out to his flock of 1.2 billion Catholics will also spur policymakers to help combat climate change.
You have a leader of a church which has 1.2 billion members, but also someone who has now gained a lot of diplomatic clout. This was shown by the fact that the Vatican brokered the historic agreement between the United States and Cuba. So he's speaking as a religious leader, but he's also speaking as a diplomat with quite a bit of influence in the corridors of power. He has also said quite specifically that he wants this encyclical on the protection of the environment and the need to save the planet from degradation to be digested and read and understood ahead of the key UN conference in Paris, which is going to be making some landmark decisions on what action should be taken to stem climate change.
Experts say the document has the potential to transform the global discussion on climate change for Catholics and non-Catholics alike by projecting the planetary crisis into moral and religious terms at a critical moment in global climate negotiations. The release was timed to attract global attention in advance of UN climate talks in Paris later this year and the Pope's upcoming addresses to the United Nations and the United States Congress.
Certainly, there are enemies against Pope Francis within the Church and outside of the Church, and especially now we see some political circles or business circles who say the Church has not to deal with such issues. It has to be out of these issues. But for the Catholic Church, it is important not only that a man and a woman pray or keep about their sins, but that they have care also for society and for the community where they live. And Pope Francis speaks about a sustainable development. He doesn't want to give recipes, it's not up to him, but he says that the political leaders must care about these issues.
It is believed that a strong message from the Pope will resonate with religious leaders across the world and empower those already working on environmental issues. Few days after the release, a few hundred people gathered in a central Roman piazza ahead of an interfaith march to the Vatican in support of Pope Francis to call on world leaders for action on climate change. While banners were being prepared for the march, participants from different backgrounds and religions chatted, sang, and prayed together.
I think what it's saying is that globally, the moral and the spiritual concern has grown, and the fact that there's so many different faiths says that communities are willing to put aside their differences and their different faiths to come together on a common issue. So whether it's the Pope through the encyclical, or it's the Muslim community, or the Christian community, or the Catholic community, we have all come together to address it because it's an issue that affects all of us as human beings.
The colorful flags and banners were painted with slogans urging people to come together to protect the environment. Jewish Rabbi Lawrence Truster from the United States, one of the organizers of the event, described the Pope's encyclical as one of the most brilliant statements of religious environmentalism he had seen in his 30 years of involvement in the movement.
The Pope is coming to the United States. There's going to be a lot of public actions in support of him while he's in Washington and New York. We're involved in that. And then, of course, the climate talks in Paris. There's going to be a lot of things all around the world in addition to being in Paris. But we're not seeing that as the end. We're seeing this as really the beginning of a worldwide people's movement to really raise our voices, to let the politicians and the diplomats know something has to be done on this. It's a moral crisis, and we don't want it to lead to a human catastrophe.
So this is a faith-based approach to influence the moral quality and content of the Paris talks on the environment, which are occurring shortly. So that's the timing concern. But I think it's an idea whose time has come. People have been talking about the effects of climate change and stewardship of the environment for a long time, but it's coming to a head now.
Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible.
The participants chanted slogans including "Nothing is impossible" and "One family, one earth" as they marched through the streets of Rome. The culmination of the march was in St. Peter's Square, where the Pope was conducting his weekly Angelus prayer and greeted them in person.
Encourage the
collaboration between people of different religions and associations for the promotion of an integral ecology, the Pope said.